If it is the case that you make these bold claims like you do in your book, that Christians ought to be paying taxes for the poor so that we could, for the poor, we got to give it all to the poor. That's what your view is.
That's not my suggestion, bro. That's Jesus' suggestion.
Then it would be the case. That you would not want these job-crushing waves of mass migration. What do you think is going to happen to you if Christians are in power?
May I please ask you one question now that you've asked me so many, and now that you've called me names? Dude, hit the other cheek. I can take it.
Piers, I think this is precisely the problem, because it just goes to show how in Western society today we are living in two completely alternate realities, largely based on the media that we are consuming.
Logically, if it's the case that Jesus Christ is God, and that is true, then Islam has to be false. Well, not really. So the idea of Christian nationalism is just that Christians remain the culturally dominant force in the United States. The people who are trying to utilize rigorism against Christians, it would be exactly who Christ would call vipers.
The only thing Donald Trump and Jesus have in common is they both spend a lot of time around hookers, and they both use ghostwriters. Christ's religion doesn't ban abortion.
The last few weeks have been a really powerful example for Christians around the world to realize we no longer can tolerate demonic evil in the spiritual warfare,
which is not against abortion.
We believe in the sanctity of life.
Helping the poor, making healthcare more accessible, and having less gun violence. I could do it all day, my friend.
All right, Isabel.
So, was that the epistle that made it up? Jesus said, "Thou shalt not have guns."
Gentlemen.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, we've got another Piers Morgan debate coming in, and this one's pretty good, folks. We're talking Christianity in this country, and which side, progressive Christianity or MAGA conservative Christianity, if you will. That's what they want to call it, but it's just conservatism. That's all it is. It's just general Christianity. That's it. No progressive, none of that. So we're going to get into this. We got Andrew Wilson coming in, and I love me some Andrew Wilson. He is the destroyer of anything and everything secular humanist. He just does a pretty good job of knocking down secular humanism. We've also got John Fugelsang. He's an author and a critic of everything Donald Trump. And Isabel Brown, who is a YouTube podcaster, just your regular conservative, I guess, commentator, if you will. So we're going to get into this, y'all. But y'all do me a favor. Smash that like button for me. It really, really helps the channel out. Subscribe if you're new around here. My normal videos, we cover news and politics, and we figure out how we're being manipulated by the corporate press. And share this video, if you would, anywhere and everywhere that you can. That is a big, big help. And if you would be so inclined, I'd be deeply appreciative if you guys would click that join button, sign up, and become a member. Help this channel expand and grow and prosper, folks. And I've got my Toby Mac shirt on today. Perfect for the venue, if you will. If you know, you know. So let's go ahead and get into this thing. It's a very fascinating debate, and I've cut out all of the highlights. So we're going to get to all the best parts. So you guys do all that for me, and let's just get into it.
Benny Johnson posted about this attack on the church in Michigan. If a mosque was shut up every month, it would be a crisis for Muslims. If a synagogue was shut up every month, it would be a crisis for Jews. If a temple was shut up every month, it would be a crisis for Hindus. Christians, this is happening to us. Christianity is under attack. It's time to get serious about it. What's your response to that?
I keep hoping that one of these preventable attacks will inspire our Christian friends on the right to want to make it a little bit harder for unstable white men to easily get weapons that are designed to kill lots of people really fast. I really hoped after the awful murder of Mr. Kirk that some of our friends on the right would agree that maybe it's far too easy for unstable 20-something males to get their hands on hardware and pop off and murder people at a political rally.
He was using an antique rifle, dude. He was using, he was using an antique rifle.
I know.
An antique bolt.
It was unsecured.
Legislation?
I didn't interrupt you once, my friend. I didn't interrupt you one time.
What legislation do you think would have even been passed that would have prevented
if his grandfather had been obliged to keep, if his grandfather had been legally obliged to keep his gun secured at home, that shooting wouldn't have happened, and the Sandy Hook shooting would not have happened.
You can't even demonstrate that's true. For all you know, the kid has the safe code.
You're not letting me finish, and you've interrupted me twice now. Piers, the deal is right-wing Christianity in America has been suckered, and you're really going to... I'm going to answer Piers's question, my friend. I didn't interrupt you. Right-wing Christianity in America has been suckered for a very long time into aligning with power and authority instead of challenging it as Christ did. Donald Trump didn't get the love of evangelicals by promising to do a damn thing Jesus commanded of us. Right-wing Christianity does not fight for the things Jesus commanded and taught us to do. Right-wing Christianity fights for conservative Christian power over every level of society. They do not fight to welcome the stranger, as Christ commands in Matthew 25 and as God commands throughout the Old Testament. They do not fight for individuals and nations to care for the sick and the poor, as commanded by Christ in the judgment of nations. They fight for right-wing conservative Christian power, and America is suffering from a gun plague where children are now killed by guns more than disease, more than they are killed by car accidents. And I keep praying this is exactly the sort of situation where a religion based on love and empathy will come to our rescue. And yet, our conservative Christian friends are locked in this mindset that somehow personal freedoms matter more than the lives of Americans.
Isabel, you've been pulling.
Hang on,
let Andrew, I'll come back to you, but let Isabel react, because you've been pulling a lot of faces as you were listening to that.
Yeah, you know, Piers, I was on with you the day that Charlie was shot, actually. We were talking about the murder of Irina Zarutska on the train in Charlotte, and I was very baffled by what I was hearing then. Nothing could have prepared me for the slew of attack against anyone who is a conservative Christian in America the last 30 seconds. There is not a single gun law on the books that would have prevented Charlie Kirk from being assassinated at a gun-free zone on the campus of Utah Valley University. When we saw the manifesto published to YouTube about the shooter at the Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis, you saw a very specific, detailed attack that was specifically against Christian children and their families, really warping in a very twisted demonic sense the mass with engravings and diary entries saying, "This is my body." I mean, we were watching a very coordinated attack going back to the Nashville shooting and to many other attacks on churches across the country over the past few years, of which there have been more than 500 attacks on Catholic churches in the United States in the last 5 years or so. This is clearly a specific attack against Christianity in America, but let's pretend that it's not just about America for a second, because the truth is it's not. Christianity by the numbers is by far and large the most persecuted religion on the face of the planet today. In Nigeria, just a few days ago, more than 60 people were killed using hammers and machetes after attending mass at a Catholic church there in Nigeria. And I read a study the other day, feel free to fact check me on this, to any of the other panelists, that more Christians have been slaughtered in Nigeria for being Christian in the last few years than Palestinians have been killed in Gaza during the midst of the Israeli-Gaza war. But you don't see any protests happening in the United States about that today. So it's ridiculous to try to create a left versus right paradigm here, or some sort of attack against the Republican Party, when there very clearly is a manifestation of spiritual warfare and demonic satanic influence in our society trying to attack Jesus Christ in America today.
Okay, so Isabel is completely right on this one. There is no legislation that would allow you to prevent crimes of this nature. People are going to get their hands on guns when guns are available, right? Once again, you can make up all the laws that you want. As she said, that was a gun-free zone. That was a law put into place to prevent people from going into certain spaces where people are vulnerable and to keep people from getting shot. Did that fix this? No. 96% of all mass shootings take place within gun-free zones. That is a statistic that is ignored by Democrats, as a matter of fact. So we can make up all the laws we want to. We could take liberties away from your right to defend yourself. We could take your liberties away from you. But that's not going to prevent bad people from doing bad things. Changing the culture, going after these people that are showing signs of mental distress, any signs of, wanting to commit some sort of mass homicide of this nature, going after these people, interdicting them, essentially preventing this from happening. That's the only way we're going to do this, by changing the culture, by showing people that, look, sometimes we need to intervene in people's lives and show them the road to Jesus. Show them the pathway of the righteous. Show them that, look, all this hate that's being spewed around on the internet, that's not reality. That's not real life. Things are drummed up. Things are turned up. Like it's turned up to 11 on the internet, right? We need to separate that from reality, right? What you hear from the corporate press is not reality. That is their version, their idea of whatever is going on in the world. That's their perverted narrative, if you will. They build out a narrative to get clicks, right? They take reality, they take news, and they pervert that into something that it's just not. They ignore certain facts. They cherry pick this and this and this from this instance. That's why we get all these out of context clips of things that Donald Trump says that, oh, they sound bad when you hear them. But when you hear the full speech out in context, oh, that wasn't so bad. And you might actually agree with what Donald Trump is saying here. So none of this, like all this stuff that, oh, Christians, oh, they just want power. None of that makes any sense, folks. We just want a cohesive society to function with a moral framework that keeps everybody in alignment with how society has functioned for thousands of years, for goodness sakes. You can't say conservatives don't progress, because we have changed a lot over the years, folks, and that is due to the progressives. Once again, I think progressives in this country are very necessary. Otherwise, we stagnate as a society, and we don't want to do that, folks. We want to see injustices, and we want to fix those injustices. But let's keep going.
I want to play a clip.
I'm not a Democrat.
I'm going to let Andrew respond here. Chris Hedge, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, said on the Secular Talk podcast that Charlie Kirk's assassination was being used to create a new martyr for the movement of Christian nationalism, which he said is a backdoor to American fascism. Let's take a look.
When fascism comes to America, it won't be with swastikas and jackboots, and it will be with the Christian cross and mass recitations of the Pledge of Allegiance. You really got a glimpse of that in the rally in Arizona or rally, whatever you want to call it, the memorial service for Kirk.
Now, Andrew, two questions for you. One is, what is your understanding of what Christian nationalism is? And as a Christian nationalist, are you concerned that it gets hijacked by people who may genuinely be white supremacists, fascists, and so on?
Well, not really. So the idea of Christian nationalism is just that Christians remain the culturally dominant force in the United States. That's it. That's the entire proposition. Everything else is an addition. So the gentleman over here, for instance, a quick question for you. Is Jesus Christ God?
I believe so, but I don't believe in imposing my opinions on others.
Okay, got you. So Jesus Christ is God. So all the religions are false?
No, I don't believe that at all. I believe in my house there are many mansions, and I believe God has many ways of the truth.
Yeah,
I don't think I'm better than anyone because Christ's movement is about humility. Christ's movement is not about public domination and power.
I just want to make sure I got this right. Are all other religions false?
I don't believe that at all, no. And I don't believe right-wing Christianity is true either.
Is Islam
right-wing Christianity does not...
Answer my question, dude.
MAGA
is Islam
does
true?
not fight for the teachings of Christ.
Is Islam true? Is Islam true?
Islam believes in the same God as Christians. Do you believe we should welcome the stranger as God and Christ command, or do you believe in Donald Trump?
Wait, they believe Jesus Christ is God?
It's not my religion. They believe Christ is a prophet.
So then it's
the Virgin
false.
Mary is mentioned more in the Holy Quran than she's mentioned in the Bible.
I'm going to walk you through the logic here. If Jesus Christ is God,
what are the Christ teachings that Trump fights for, my friend?
Then it is the case.
What are the gospel teachings your movement fights for? Your movement uses Christ as a prop, and you legislate against his commands.
Stop filibustering.
Dude, you interrupted me.
Your question. So I was in the middle of it. I asked you a single question and was getting to the follow-up, and you go on these long diatribes.
You asked two questions.
Listen to what I'm saying.
You asked two questions, my friend.
Logically, if it's the case that Jesus Christ is God, and that is true, then Islam has to be false. And you have to proclaim that that is the case as a follower of Christ.
Yes, too bad the founding fathers didn't have that system in our country.
Well, the thing that's so funny is that you say that you're a progressive Catholic. You're worried about Christians in power. You say that Christians are out here. Oh, Andrew, Christians are out here. They should be looking at these other immigrants as religious refugees. That's what you said, your own words.
They're actually Christian refugees. At our border, they are Christian refugees that y'all have been socialized to call illegals.
Then how come you lobbied for Kamala Harris, raised money for the Harris campaigns, a Democrat operative, when she said that she wanted staunch border policies? She literally went to Guatemala and said, "You're not allowed to come. Do not come."
I know she did. I'm not a Democrat, my friend. I'm not a Democrat. Her policies cause less harm than Trump's.
You happen to be a Democrat operative.
Her policies cause less harm than Trump's, my friend. And her policies were closer to the actual teachings of Christ than Trump. Let me ask you.
Then that would be the exact same logic that we would have.
May I respectfully ask you one question? Can I ask you one question?
You're such a hypocrite, by the way.
Will you please? May I please ask you one question now that you've asked me so many? And now that you've called me names, Dude, hit the other cheek. I can take it. Call me more names. I want to ask you something. Please tell me one actual
heretic,
gospel
false
commandment
Christian,
or
total
teaching
liar,
of Christ.
complete fraud.
Please tell me one actual gospel. Please tell us all and the viewers watching one actual gospel commandment or teaching of Christ that the MAGA movement fights for. Not what conservative Christians like. Something Christ, who is a mascot to this movement, actually commanded of us. Chapter and verse, if you can.
Sure.
Welcome the stranger. Individuals and nations take care of the poor. Stop executing people. Your movement.
Do you want me to answer?
Let
Or are you
him
going to
answer the question then.
Please do.
Do you want me
Andrew.
to answer, or
Please
are
do.
you going to answer? So the truth of the matter is
Give me
that
one.
if you're really as concerned with the poor as you claim, you would be all about the MAGA movement, who's trying to stop job-crushing
I'm asking you for one
immigration
teaching of the poor.
to the United States. I'm giving it to you. Calm down.
Christ commands us to welcome
the stranger.
Calm down so I
We
can
can't
answer your
hear.
question. Calm down so I can answer your question, lunatic. I'm going to answer it precisely. Here's how it
The
works.
names of this guy.
If it is the case that you make these bold claims like you do in your book, that Christians ought to be paying taxes for the poor so that we could, for the poor, we got to give it all to the poor. That's what your view is.
That's not my
then it would be
suggestion,
the
bro. That's
case,
Jesus' suggestion.
then it would be the case. Then it would be the case that you would not want these job-crushing waves of mass migration coming to the United States, which displace
One teaching of Jesus,
the poor.
Andrew. Just one.
They
Give me
displace
one.
the poor.
Give me one
I
teaching
just
of Christ.
explained to you that
Give me
if
one
it's the
teaching of
case,
Christ you fight for.
I just did. I just explained to you, if you really want to uplift the poor, you don't do it with crushing
What
mass
Jesus
migration.
teaching did you
crazy.
explain?
I just explained to you that by your view of what Christians
What
ought to be
teaching?
doing, we are doing it. Do you not understand this?
Christ
it's an internal
says that
critique of your
individuals
crazy
and
position.
nations will be judged. Christ says in Matthew 25 that individuals and nations will be judged, heaven or hell,
And
by
tell
how
me
they
this.
care for the sick,
What-
care for the poor,
Yeah.
welcome the stranger, and care for those in
Okay.
prison. MAGA legislates and votes against these commandments of Jesus.
And what was
but
the
uses
Kamala
Jesus as a
Harris?
prop
What was
to
the
gain
Kamala
power.
Harris Christian doctrine that you were for?
Kamala Harris is closer by light years to the teachings of Christ than the
What?
Republican
What?
Party, but I don't consider
Tell
the
me
Democrats
what?
to be.
Tell
I'm not
me
a
what?
Democrat. Where
You
on the
I can't
treatment of
believe you
immigrants,
can't
on
believe you.
anti-racism, on women's equality, on helping the poor, on making health care more accessible, on having less gun violence. I could do it all day, my friend.
Okay, so that's all nice and lovely, but you know what, my dude? The Bible also talks about beware of false prophets. Look, I've got the book right here, and I just went over and read the parable of talents, as a matter of fact. That's Matthew 25. And what they were talking about is bringing people together. Look, in this country, right, we can take these people that come across that border illegally. We can take them in. We have been doing that, but that's not really what the Bible says, is it? The Bible also talks about following the laws of the land, right? So we have a method by which people can come into this country legally. Okay, following the laws of the land. And what do we do with those people? We take them in, we give them jobs, we give them food, we clothe them, we give them money, we give them assistance, we give them all of these amenities from this country because we are compassionate people. But these people that don't use that process to come into this country, they don't care about those things. Obviously. Now, look, I talk about this all the time. You can give the benefit of the doubt to some of these people, but look, when you have these large groups of migrants that are coming across that border illegally, these cartels, right? They see that as an opportunity, and they take advantage of these large mass migrant caravans that come into this country, and they use that to operate within those populations. They use that to smuggle humans. They use that to smuggle drugs. That must be brought to a halt, folks. That is bringing death and destruction upon this country. Once again, you also bring too many migrants into this country. It disrupts the labor market, folks. That's putting our own citizens out of jobs. And I know the left, they love to say, oh, well, they're just doing the jobs that Americans don't want to do. That's not true, folks. That is absolutely not true. When you look into the specifics of everything that goes on, these migrants that are in the country illegally and work these odd jobs or whatever it may be, picking the crops or, doing whatever, right? Busboy at your damn restaurant, whatever it may be. These people, because they're not paying taxes, because they're not in the country legally, because they're not supposed to be here, they have to get paid under the table. Or we can't let the big daddy government know that these people are here, so they get paid less wages. They don't get a lot of things that you get. Oh, like paid time off, paid vacation. There's much more of a requirement upon them to come into work, right? If they miss work, hey, we can just go find another illegal. You're fired. You're gone. Boom. But they don't get none of the rights, right? Like a lot of people say that these migrants, these illegals, oh, they have all the rights under the Constitution, but that's not true. It's a limited form of those rights. They don't get the same rights. They don't get voting rights. There's a lot of things we could sit here all day and go over all the things, but it is not right to violate the laws of the land, and that is the laws that are on the books. Those laws were put in place for a reason, to keep these nations together. That same book, Matthew, it also talks about bringing all the nations together, right? When Christ is on his throne, bringing them all and separating them. You got on the right, you got all the sheep and the lambs. And on the left, you have all the goats. I wonder what that could mean, right? You could pull any sort of phrase in here, right? You could take anything out of the Bible and use that as a bludgeon to beat down just about anything, right? When you cherry pick the Bible, that is the tenets of a false prophet, folks. That is absolutely true, right? So this guy right here, he's conducting himself as a false prophet. Don't buy into it, but make up your own mind. That's what I would say. I am just warning you of what the Bible says. Let's keep going.
All right, Andrew, Andrew,
this is really
Andrew, let
funny.
me just ask you a question, which is this.
Happy to talk about Scripture, by the way. Happy to talk about what Christ actually says versus Republican policies.
Me too.
Okay, Andrew, my question for you would be this. Under Christian nationalism, what happens to Jews, Muslims, Hindus, atheists? I mean, what happens to those people if the identity of the United States is to be a Christian nationalist country? Then where does that leave people who don't identify as Christian nationalists?
Yeah, same thing that happens when you have state religions in nations right now. Nothing. So there's Western nations, people forget about this, that have churches. They actually have the church of whatever the nation is. And guess what? You're still free to pray how you want. Guess what? Here in the United States, when it's 95% Christian, identified 95% as Christian, you can still be a Jew. You can still
and yet
be a
they're
Muslim.
under siege, right? They're persecuted, right?
That would be a bonus in our favor that we're not doing the persecuting, doofus. So the thing is, it's so funny here. It's like even when we have full spectrum, even when we have full spectrum dominance, Jesus called people vipers like you. Even when we have full spectrum dominance in culture,
he was calling out the conservative religious bosses when he did that, my friend.
We are far better and leadership capacities than secular atheists are. Guys like this, their entire
you should be in power, right?
The entire
power
crux,
for the Christian, yes, power above others,
crux
yes,
of what you want is just gay sex, right? Isn't that really what your criticism is?
No, sir. You're lying about me because the argument makes you uncomfortable.
What are you upset?
No, sir.
What are you upset about cultural Christians for? What are you actually upset about here?
If
Christians are in power,
to follow the
what do you
teachings of
think's going to happen to you? What do you think's going to happen to you if Christians are in power? What?
I think that the founding fathers were very specific more than once and said in the Treaty of Tripoli, ratified by Washington, signed by Adams, the government of the United States is in no way founded on the Christian religion. I don't consider your movement to be of Christ, my friend. I don't consider your movement to be of Christ.
Okay, if everyone talks at the same time, I can promise you. Hang on.
Trump's trying to ban an entire religion from entering the country, my friend.
If everyone talks at the same time, I can guarantee you one thing: nobody can understand.
Terrorists from entering the country.
No one will understand what anyone says if you all talk over each other.
Sir.
Please, guys, if you talk over each other, no one can hear a word you're all saying. Isabel.
The founding fathers were actually quite clear that you were expected to understand a working knowledge of submission to God in order to be an active participant in governance in the United States. Of the 13 original states, all of them, every single original state constitution of the 13 states required a declaration of faith to serve in the state government. 9 of them required you to have a declaration of faith as a Christian to serve in the state government. The Declaration of Independence.
And yet the U.S. Constitution forbids it.
Our relationship to God.
No, it refers it to the 10th Amendment. Have you heard of the 10th Amendment?
And they had a better
The First Amendment forbids a religious test.
All right, let Isabel finish her point, then I'll come to the others.
In fact, the book of Deuteronomy is the most quoted book in America's founding documents by leaps and bounds, more than any secular text. So the very foundation of the United States of America was indeed to be one nation under God, a Christian nation.
But the founding fathers also wanted to have a separate. Hang on. The founding fathers also wanted to have a clear separation between church and state for the United States, didn't they?
And
well,
the
not really. They were
Okay,
saying
well, that's
that you
interesting.
can't-
So, Andrew,
Yes.
am I not right in assuming that, Andrew?
You're not right in assuming that. They didn't want an establishment clause at the federal level for a national religion. States were allowed to have their own religions, and they did. They did have their own religions. She's absolutely right. You couldn't vote in many of the states unless you declared that you were part of the faithful. Like, this is just all revisionist history. We have the 10th Amendment, which says that
history.
if these powers are not given to the United States government, they go to the prospective states. The states had their own religious institutions. Mr. Viper over here is a complete liar. Always has been. And his book, he's full of
this
it.
guy.
The concept of the
the
separation
names,
of
my
church and
goodness.
state in our
You're
founding
telling you the
documents.
same name Jesus said.
It's
It's
only
not, I have to
referenced-
say, Andrew, it's not very
This is a-
Christian. It's not very Christian to keep hurling personal insults at another person on the panel, is it?
Well,
I
then
can
take it
take
up
it.
with Jesus. He
I
called
can
guys
take it.
like this
I don't remember
vipers too.
Jesus saying, thou shalt go
He
out and
called
call everyone
conservative
you don't
Christian
like a
bosses
doofus.
vipers.
He did.
I do
He
think
called
that-
them vipers all the time. I don't know what to tell you. He did.
Yeah, he called conservative religious authorities those words.
The people who are trying to utilize rigorism against Christians, it would be exactly who Christ would call
No,
vipers.
I'm using
Piers.
Jesus against
That's
hypocrites.
All right, let me ask
Jesus
John.
against
All right,
hypocrites.
John, hang on.
Okay, once again, Andrew and Isabel are right about this. The federal government was meant to keep all the states together. We have a certain amount of rights, right? This dude starts talking about like, oh, well, Christians, they don't adhere to anything under the Bill of Rights. Christians made the Bill of Rights. Christians wrote the Declaration of Independence. Christians wrote the Constitution of the United States, the Pledge of Allegiance. One nation under God, indivisible. At least we're supposed to be, but we're kind of rocky right now because how things are going with this atheism that is trying to take over the nation, right? And look, listen, folks out there, Christian nationalism is not a bad thing. It has been used as a pejorative against Christians because, oh, well, Christians want to stay in power. That's all they want is just power. No, we want to live cohesively in this nation. That's it. We have a specific moral framework that allows for society to function as it has, once again, for thousands of years, right? We want to keep that framework together because morality is important to everybody. It's important to a cohesive society to keeping these things functioning, right? Now, the states, they absolutely do have religions. The separation of church and state was meant for the federal government itself because we have freedom of religion. If a state wants to claim Islam as their state religion, they have the right under the Constitution, under the federal government to do so. And there's nothing we can do about that, and that is totally fine. Once again, I don't think any other Christian nation, or any other Christian state, I should say, because that's what it was meant to be, is a collection of nations. We're supposed to have sovereign independence for the most part, right? Any power that the federal government does not have, that derives and falls to the states, right? So, right, we wouldn't have any problem with any of this. But the nation itself is Christian. The vast majority of the population has traditionally been Christian. It's only been a recent phenomena that, atheism is kind of coming into its own. Secular humanists, they're becoming more popular, right? But they don't have moral frameworks. They can't keep this nation together. They're absolutely right on this. And I love every single minute of it. You can't just invoke revisionist history and cherry pick what you want from the Constitution, cherry pick what you want from history, and be like, look, Christians are evil. It doesn't make any sense to me, folks. And this guy's supposed to be a Christian, and yet he's advocating for no religion whatsoever? Like, are you kidding me about that? That's weird. Like, the thing about religion is you don't have to believe in the religion. Once again, you can live within a Christian nation as a Muslim, as a Buddhist, as a Hindu, as any of these things. But can you do that in any of those other religious nations? As we heard from Isabel, and you can go check this, you can fact check all of this. Christians are being persecuted all over the place, all over the world, by the droves, folks. It is what it is. Just let that sit with you. Can you be a Christian in a Muslim nation? I don't know. Look at what's going on in the Middle East and you tell me. let's keep going.
Just against him.
All right, John, hang on. Don't all talk
here.
at the same time, please. John, let me ask you this. You believe that Christian nationalism is against the American Constitution. Why?
Because the founders were very specific about not wanting to have an official state religion. Our official religion is all and or none. The problem is the movement of Christian nationalism is as against the Bill of Rights as they are against the actual teachings of Jesus, which is why you will never see our right-wing friends fighting to put any Jesus quotes on any buildings. Jesus never mentions abortion. God asserts that a fetus is property in Exodus 21, that a woman's life has more value in his eye. God gives abortion tips for pregnant unfaithful wives in Numbers chapter 5. It's why abortion's not banned in Jesus' religion. And that's why God and Jesus and Moses and Paul and the prophets never once condemn ending pregnancies or say what the penalty for ending a pregnancy should be. Am I saying Jesus was pro-abortion? No. What I'm saying is for 45 years in my country, Piers, right-wing Christians have been groomed to prioritize something Christ never talked about and then vote against all the things he actually commanded. Jesus was against the death penalty more than once, not a fan of killing the sinner, never mentioned abortion, and yet, you can't run for office as a Republican unless you want to criminalize abortion, have the government force citizens to be pregnant against their will, pretend that comes from Jesus, and also think Jesus was wrong about not executing people.
Isabel, I get the feeling you don't entirely agree.
No, not one iota of me agrees with that statement, Piers, and nor should
Where does the Bible ban it?
In Scripture. It starts with a very simple commandment in the 10 Commandments: thou shalt not murder. Let's take off our Catholic hats for a
Judaism
second
does not consider a fetus to be a full life. Abortions are legal and free in Israel right now.
Oh, I just love this right here. I just totally love this. You want to know why that is, my dude? You want to know why the Bible doesn't ban abortions? Because it didn't exist. It was completely unthinkable for somebody to snuff the life that hasn't even come out of the womb yet. It was completely unthinkable. Therefore, they did not think to abort babies like we do this day. That is a complete atheist mindset right there. Once again, you can cherry pick anything you want from the Bible, but that does not make it so. The Bible must be read in its context. Everything. You can't cherry pick a single section out of there, right? He's trying to pretend that, oh, Jesus wasn't against abortions because they didn't know about abortions back then. That's absurd. It's completely absurd. Think about it like this. Do you think 2,000 years ago that they got out there and took mifepristone or whatever the hell it's called, any day after pill or anything like that? Do you think they got out there and did surgery on a pregnant woman to take a fetus out before it was fully mature? No, they didn't, folks. That is an absurdity. You let that life come to fruition. It's insane, these people, how they completely pervert what the scripture says. Once again, you can cherry pick anything you want to, but abortion is wrong. Murder is wrong. Boom, it's murder. Like, you can use anything you want to try to make yourself believe that a fetus is not a human. But once again, deep down, we all know that is a human life that you are snuffing out, and it is wrong. Once again, he's right about one thing. You know, they do put before the baby the life of the mother in many cases. If we know for a fact the mother is going to lose her life, then look, I get it, right? I'm a man of compromise here. We all must live together. I totally get that one. But you can't use that as a jumping off point to allow for abortions electively just because you want to, just because you're not financially set, right? There are many options to prevent pregnancy. I can't stand this idea that these people, we accidentally got pregnant. How? How does that happen? Was it some sort of divine intervention? But you don't believe in God, do you? You didn't accidentally get pregnant. You did it on purpose, right? You engaged in an action knowing the possibility could be pregnancy. And then, whoops, you got pregnant, right? You don't drive down the street and with no seatbelt on and be like, well, I got into a wreck. Oop, that was an accident. I busted my front teeth out on my steering wheel because I forgot to put my seatbelt on. You don't blame the other guy for you running into them. It's ridiculous. You know, as a human being, If you get in your car and you drive down the street with no seatbelt on and you run into somebody, you could be injured. Therefore, you generally put your seatbelt on, don't you? Yes. I know there's airbags, but we're not talking about airbags, right? But this is what I'm talking about. If you engage in an action knowing there's a possibility that there's a consequence, once again, plus people look at it as a consequence. It's not a consequence. That is an opportunity for you to change your life, for you to produce and prosper, as a matter of fact. And that it will absolutely change your life, and for the better. I was one of these people. I didn't want to have kids. I was scared of that. I didn't want the responsibility until I had one. I never once thought about, oh, let's abort this thing. No, folks, that's ridiculous. That's murder. That's taking another life. You can't do that. You're not supposed to be allowed to do that, right? But once I had that kid, my perspective on the world completely changed, and everything I do in my life is now devoted to providing for my family. And I'm completely happy. I would not have it any other way. I love my son. I absolutely love my son. You know, we have our problems, you know. It is what it is, just like every family. He's a teenager. He's 14, so it is what it is. You know, teenagers have their problems, so, you know, we go through our issues. But anyway, I never understood this idea that these Christians, some Christians out there, would think that elective abortions are okay. I just don't get that, right? Look, once again, I'll say this. I'm a man of compromise, right? I don't think abortion should be allowed. There's certain instances, there's certain situations where I think, yeah, if the life of the mother is pretty much guaranteed to be snuffed out by this pregnancy, then yes, go right ahead. I'm a man of compromise, right? We must, if we must put value of one life over the other, right? We know for a fact that this woman can produce another baby. We don't know if that baby is going to have the potential to produce another, right? There's all kinds of possible outcomes we could sit here and think about. But the fact is, you know, if we put value of one life over the other, it is what it is. Humans just do that, right? I don't understand it all that much. But look, for the most part, when it comes to assault or anything like that, look, I understand. That was forced upon the woman. Her rights were taken away. She didn't want that. Look, I get it. But once again, I'm a man of compromise. I think that in that situation, anybody that is assaulted like that, they should go get one of those day after pills within a couple of weeks, right? And I'm totally fine with that. Within a couple of weeks, you go and get one. It should be free for any sort of victim of assault. Should be able to go get this pill, and boom, that's it. That's it. If you wait 4, 5, 6 weeks, it's too late at that point. Look, I'm sorry. If you were indecisive about that, there's other options out there as well. There's always adoption. There are many, 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 many couples that are willing to adopt children. Take that route instead of committing murder, essentially. Take the other route. Take the short road, essentially. Look, it happens, folks. These things happen. I understand. That's why I'm a man of compromise. If we're going to put some sort of nationwide ban on abortion, I do believe, just for the sake of other people out there, we should give a few weeks. That's my compromise on this. I'm not completely unwilling to move on my position. That doesn't mean my position has changed. That just means that I'm in compromise mode. I understand the plight and the beliefs of other people. That's what this nation is supposed to be about. We're supposed to compromise on all these positions so we can live cohesively. That's what Republicans are currently doing with the government shutdown, as a matter of fact. You want to talk about that? Democrats, what are they saying? Oh, Republicans are being cruel for the sake of cruelty. They're manufacturing a crisis. What are Republicans doing? We don't want to give illegals health care. That's ridiculous. These subsidies that are going to expire, right? That's COVID era emergency pandemic subsidies. Do we still need this, folks? That's what they want. That's Democrats unwilling to compromise on their position because they want to give health care to illegals, while saying at the same time, that's not what we're doing, but that's exactly what they're doing. Just go look into it. That's all you've got to do. I don't have time to break all that down right here. It's way too much to go over. But that's what's going on. Democrats are unwilling to compromise. Republicans are in compromise mode because they're keeping the spending levels, if we're going to get outside of the healthcare talk, the spending levels the same as it was under Joe Biden. That's insane. That's insane to me, right? They should be reducing spending because we're spending $1.8 trillion in a deficit, folks. That means, in case you don't know what a deficit is, that's $1.8 trillion more than we take in revenue. That means they're having to print $1.8 trillion. That means $1.8 trillion worth of the value of your money is being taken away. Your purchasing power is being taken away annually by Democrats and Republicans, to be honest with you, because neither one, once again, Democrats want to increase spending. They want that number higher. They absolutely do. That's what they want. Republicans say, no, we're going to keep everything the same, which is ridiculous. That's a compromise for Republicans. I don't understand why people don't get this. And they're still trying to say Republicans are being cruel. Are you freaking kidding me with this? Are you kidding me? Like, we could either run ourselves headlong into bankruptcy, or we can be fiscally responsible and balance the budget. You have two choices here. Well, actually, there's three choices. We could just keep doing what we've been doing. I don't get it, folks. I don't understand why Republicans don't have a backbone, and I don't understand how Democrats can't seem to compromise on anything at all. It's always what they want or nothing else. And Republicans are always like, slow down there, Democrats. Okay, we'll give you this, but we're not going past this line. Until next year, when they absolutely go past that line. And then what is it? It's more demands from Democrats about some unreasonable policy that they want. It's just insane to watch Republicans just get strung along by that carrot from Democrats. It's really insane. Truly is, folks, but I've gotten way off topic, so you guys let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comments section. It's funny to watch these quote-unquote progressive Christians that are not really Christians, folks. They aren't. If you can advocate for abortion, advocate for transing your kids and all this other nonsense, I'm sorry, you're not a true Christian. You don't understand the fundamentals of the Bible. You don't understand the fundamentals of morality. It is what it is. That's an uncompromising position right there. Absolutely. There are things I'm uncompromising on, but that's one of them. But y'all let me know what y'all think. That's all I got. Don't forget to smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. That would be great. And click that join button, y'all. Do me a favor. Help this movement grow, expand, and all that good stuff. So click the join button, sign up, become a member, and be part of the team, y'all. We got to move this movement. We got to grow this movement, if you will. We got to make it bigger, y'all. So y'all do all that for me. And you guys remember out there that God has a plan for all of us. And he loves each and every one of you. So y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.